Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I got an email from Woodcraft Supply Corner. Subject line, they're talking about the possibility of the whole government of the United States failing. Then what shall we do? Elder Lund. And then in the email, hi, smiley face. Thought this very poignant considering all the economic problems, ... and us being in the winding up scene, quote unquote. This is part of the article below. Not sure how I came across it. Switched to a tab, and there it was, laugh out loud. Really cool article, so wanted to pass it along. Have a great day. And then they post the quote. And I want to read a little bit more than what's posted in the email. And thank you, Woodcraft Supply Corner. They always send me a lot of good information. So the one telling this story is Gerald Lund, Emeritus General Authority 70. I just want to show you here. His church callings have included stake president, bishop, and he also served as a member of the second quorum of the 70 from 2002 to 2008. And it looks like he wrote this article for LDS Living. This was published October 7th of 2020. And that's actually kind of important. And I think this is why he wrote this article, because of what was going on in 2020. And he tells a really interesting story about, at the time, Elder Russell M. Nelson of the Quorum of the 12, and his thoughts of impending doom, economic collapse, the collapse of the U.S. government. And I think this is really important to consider, especially now that he's president of the church. So when you're in this LDS Second Coming niche and you're producing this kind of content, you come across all sorts of theories about the Second Coming and other topics. And unfortunately, there's a subsection that is very, very, very doom and gloom and pessimistic. And I call it sometimes doom and gloom entertainment, not to make light of prophecies that do talk about catastrophes and war and all sorts of horrible things, which I feel those things are already taking place as we speak, even if it's not happening to you. But I feel like there's just this segment that really fixates on these kind of things. And it could be for multiple reasons. Some people maybe just, they haven't studied the words of the prophets, like modern day prophets, and what they say and what our attitude should be when it comes to these calamities and prophecies. Some people, I think, unfortunately, and I don't blame them per se, but with any topic, anything, there's going to be some kind of industry. And so you're going to have some people that make money from, selling prepping supplies or whatever the case may be. And so they may have more of a bias. Sometimes people are just really paranoid. Sometimes there can be mental illness. And I'm not saying that you have mental illness if you are worried about the future, but I want to do my part and push back against some of that, not with my own reasoning, but just pointing to the words of prophets and apostles and general authorities. And in this case, we're going to hear from, at the time, Elder Nelson. Again, now he's president of the church. And I've added this to my spreadsheet, quotes A through Z, currently row 27 for America, cleansing of, destruction of, etc. I'm so glad that I came across this quote. While serving as a General Authority 70, I had one of those unexpected teaching moments that life presents to us. This was when the financial crash was in full swing and our country was experiencing the most drastic drop in the economy since the Great Depression. Now, hopefully you remember what he's talking about. This was back in like 2008, 2009. There was the housing bubble and there was all this stuff going on and everybody was losing their minds. Now, I just want to say, and you can let me know in the comments below, but I personally, if I hadn't watched the news, I would have been none the wiser about what was going on. I'm sure maybe it did affect me in some kind of way, but I don't think I would have been conscious of it. Now, I'm not saying that people weren't affected by what happened back then. You can let me know your experience, but I feel like that's pretty much always been the case my entire life. Now, I didn't live during the Great Depression. I didn't live during World War II or other times. So I'm not saying that people don't suffer, but I feel like sometimes we let alarmism get the best of us. And if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't really know that anything is even going on. And some people just love to fixate on politics and the economy and just like make mountains out of molehills. Not saying that this was a molehill, but anyway. So this is what he's talking about, is that period. Um, every day there were new announcements. The stock market crash, the collapse of the housing market, major banks, mortgage companies, retirement funds, and investment houses were failing. There was talk of massive government bailouts. Unemployment was skyrocketing. A dark cloud had settled over the country and was spreading to other nations. In the fall of 2007, my assignment as a General Authority 70 was in Salt Lake City, working in the church office building. One day I went down to a small cafeteria in the basement of the church administration building that is reserved for general authorities. After getting my food, I saw that 4 of my colleagues in the 70 were seated at a table for 6, just starting to eat. They invited me to join them. We spoke briefly about our various assignments. But soon, the talk turned to the current financial crisis. It didn't take long for our conversation to become quite bleak in tone. One of the brethren had a grandchild who had recently graduated with an MBA, but was having no luck in finding employment. Another reported that a grandchild was unsure about wanting to get married and bring children into the world. Again, I'm not trying to dismiss this person's concerns, but I don't understand that mentality. I wouldn't care if I was going to die the next day. I would want to get married. I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm sorry. I don't understand. About that time, as this cloud of gloom settled over the lunch table, Russell M. Nelson, then Elder Nelson of the 12, came into the lunchroom with a tray of food. Seeing that we had a vacant spot at our tables, he joined us. He ate quietly for a time as our conversation went right on in that same sense of discouragement. Finally, one of the brethren said, "They're talking about the possibility of the whole government of the United States failing. Then what shall we do?" Elder Nelson, who hadn't said much since sitting down, laid down his fork and looked at us directly. His expression was very sober as he spoke quietly, saying something like this: "Brethren, the Lord chose the United States of America as the place for the restoration of the gospel in our dispensation. He did that so we would have a base of religious freedom that would sustain the work of the restoration. Also, the financial affluence and political stability of the United States makes it possible for our church to take the gospel to the world. That is a task that is not yet finished. Brethren, the Lord is at the helm. He will not let this work fail." End quote. That was more than 10 years ago, but I still vividly remember 2 things. First, how sheepish we felt for letting ourselves become so negative. And the second was the lesson taught. God is in control. Why then do we fear? It was a profound teaching moment, and I've reminded myself of that day often when I have found myself growing discouraged and pessimistic. God is at the helm. So I love that so much because I have never felt this way because of the sources that I listen to. Trusted sources, prophets, apostles, general authorities, and they do not speak this way. Again, you might say, well, read the scriptures. I do read the scriptures. You think I don't read the scriptures? I have a Second Coming channel. You think I don't know? Look at all this work that I've done to collect the words of prophets, apostles from our dispensation and also from the scriptures. You have to take it all together. It's not segmented. There's not a disconnect in the church. It doesn't matter if it's from a previous dispensation or this dispensation. They all go together. And when I listen to General Conference, when I listen to social media posts by the brethren, when I read their books, when I read church manuals, so on and so forth, that just is not what is taught. In fact, the contrary. But you have this persistent idea of the cleansing of America as though like it has to be completely destroyed. And we haven't seen that yet. And so we're not close to the second coming. That you better be ready because things are going to get really bad. There's massive destruction coming to the United States, to Utah, to Missouri, to whatever. So this is just another quote that goes against that idea. We have a couple other quotes that I want to share with you. This one is from President Oaks. This is the May 2021 General Conference. Defending our divinely inspired Constitution. Our belief in divine inspiration gives Latter-day Saints a unique responsibility to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and principles of constitutionalism wherever we live. We should trust in the Lord and be positive about this nation's future. This is something that too many people do not do. And I think sometimes it's because of their sources that they listen to. It could be just individuals with YouTube channels or authors of, second coming books or whatever. But I feel like another big source of this kind of attitude comes from the political world, especially when you kind of go down the path of like conspiracy type people, which you have to be really, really careful with that. A lot of those people, not all, I'm not saying all of them, but I feel like from my experience, and I have consumed a lot of that kind of content, especially back in, say, like 2016, 17, 18, 19, all the way up till 20, like 2016 to 2020. That was like a big time for me of like consuming that kind of content. And so much of it is based on speculation or loose connections or just very poor research and sometimes very poor reasoning skills. And the more entrenched you are in your politics, I feel like the more you are to go down that path. Either way, whether it's the right or the left, when you go to extremes and you become an extremist, I feel like that messes with the way that you think, and your view of the world starts to become very skewed. But this is mostly what we're talking about here. Mostly comes from, I think, the right, and I am someone that is conservative. You don't need to worry about that. But sometimes you go so far that way, you become just paranoid of everything, just everybody and anybody. And so I feel like sometimes these kind of people want there to be a cleansing of America, for everything to be reset, to be destroyed, because they want to clear out just all this like corruption and all these problems. And so maybe they see that as the solution. And so they want this to be true. It could be something like that. Or, in your paranoia and being so entrenched in your ideas, you feel like God is going to do that and you're going to get the satisfaction of seeing the other side pay for everything that they've done. I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like politics a lot of times plays a big hand in this. We got this. This is from Elder Mark E. Peterson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, BYU devotional, July 4th, of 1976. So that was a really significant day. It's the bicentennial of the founding of this country. The name of the talk is America, World Leader. He says, eventually, America will be the center of the final gathering of God's people as the millennium approaches. And our flag will fly right on into that blessed time. Brigham Young said, when the day comes in which the kingdom of God will bear rule, the flag of the United States will proudly flutter, unsullied on the flagstaff of liberty and equal rights, without a spot to sully its fair surface. The glorious flag our fathers have bequeathed to us will then be unfurled to the breeze by those who have power to hoist it aloft and defend its sanctity. End quote. So America will not fail. It will have to go through a cleansing, however, so that wickedness may be abolished, but the nation as such will not fail. He doesn't clarify what that cleansing is. It could refer to the second coming itself, in which case the entire world is going to go through a cleansing. The wicked will be removed, but he says that the nation will not fail. We also have this from President Harold B. Lee. This is a BYU Idaho devotional, October 25th, 1973. He says, I think we must be on the optimistic side. This is a great nation. This is a great country. This is the most favored of all lands. While it is true there are dangers and difficulties that lie ahead of us, we must not assume that we are going to lie down and watch the country go to ruin. We should not be heard to predict ills and calamities for the nation. And that's exactly what a lot of these people do. Especially those that are selling products and it's like they want it to happen. On the contrary, we should be providing optimistic support of the nation. You must remember, brethren, that this church is one of the most powerful agencies for the progress of the world, and we should all bear our testimonies so that we all sound with one voice. We must tell the world how we feel about this land and this nation and bear our testimonies about the great mission and destiny that it has. It is the negative, pessimistic comments about the nation that do as much harm as anything to the country today. Brethren, we must tell them in a positive way that what they should be doing. We should not be so concerned about finding out what is wrong with America, but we should be finding what is right about America and should be speaking optimistically and enthusiastically about America. Yes, men may fail, but this nation won't fail. I have faith in America, and you and I must have faith in America if we understand the teachings of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He says, if we understand the teachings of the gospel of Jesus Christ, then we must have faith in America. And I think it's along the lines of what President Nelson said. So I want to point you to a couple of resources if you want to look into this further. I have this spreadsheet. This is called Quotes, Prophecy, False, Unverified. These are these like rumor type prophecies or supposed prophecies that you find on message boards or sent to you in emails, or people make YouTube videos about them that cannot be verified, or some of them have been called false, just flat out false, like this first one, Vision of the Destruction of America by Anonymous, but usually people say John Taylor or Wilford Woodruff. The Yellow Dog Prophecy, the church has already talked about this in the Ensign. People still believe this, even though the church has already talked about it. And there's some other ones. The Coming of the Great White Chief. I don't think anyone believes this anymore, but this was one that was popular back in, I think, the 40s. George Albert Smith's Vision of World War III. Charles D. Evans' Vision of America's Future. A supposed final prophecy of Joseph Smith. This one's actually a little bit more on the believable side, but I can't find anybody that can verify it. And then the Carson Temple Vision. So we have to be careful with our research and what we choose to believe, especially if it can't be verified by an authoritative source. And if it comes from just like these weird websites, message boards, and it's just one of those things that gets passed around, and it's passed around as though it's like some kind of, people are addicted. Okay. People are addicted to dopamine. In other words, they're addicted to excitement. That's another thing, is we're looking for things that excite us and make us feel alive. And, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I can't believe that this might happen or that this will happen. And you're just looking for that next hit. You see this incredible prophecy or supposed prophecy and it excites you. And so your brain gets that reward. But are you looking more for dopamine, or are you looking more for the truth? And are you looking for rigorous research into these things? I have a couple other things that you can look at. This is Quotes A through Z, row 21 for alarmism. I want to read this one really quick. This is from Elder Neil A. Maxwell of the Quorum of the 12, April 1988 General Conference, for I will lead you along. Members of the church need not and should not be alarmists. They need not be deflected from quietly and righteously pursuing their daily lives. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I feel like that reflects President Nelson in that story that we read. That's the way that Elder Lund described him. is that he was calm, he was sober, he was quiet. He definitely wasn't an alarmist. President Nelson is a smart person, and he's very connected to the Lord. He definitely has a sound mind, and he definitely does not have the spirit of fear. And I guess we'll just end on that because I have this other row. This is row 207 for Future is Bright. And President Nelson himself, right now as president of the church, talks this way. Like this. This is the October 2020 General Conference. The name of the talk, A New Normal. Throughout the proceedings, I have pictured you in my mind listening to conference. I've asked the Lord to help me understand what you're feeling, worrying about, or trying to resolve. I've wondered what I might say to conclude this conference that would send you forth with the optimism about the future that I know the Lord wants you to feel. The Lord wants you to feel optimistic about the future, is what he just said. Continuing, we live in a glorious age, foreseen by prophets for centuries. This is the dispensation when no spiritual blessing will be withheld from the righteous. Despite the world's commotion, the Lord would have us look forward to the future with joyful anticipation. And I have a whole bunch of other quotes that talk about how we should be optimistic about the future and good things are coming and to not fear. Actually, I guess I'll end with this. This was addressed by Elder Dale G. Renlund of the Quorum of the 12 in this last General Conference in April. Personal preparation to meet the Savior. I'm just going to read the red parts. When President Nelson speaks about the second coming, it is always with joyful optimism. However, a girl in primary recently told me that she becomes anxious whenever the second coming is mentioned. She said, I'm scared because bad things are going to happen before Jesus comes again. It's not just children who may feel this way. The best advice for her, for you, and for me is to follow the Savior's teachings. His instructions are neither mysterious nor complex. When we follow them, we do not need to fear or be anxious. We'll just end it right there. So I'm glad that I have this new quote, a story told by Elder Gerald Lund, Emeritus General Authority 70, who tells a story of President Nelson's attitude when it comes to these type of things. So I hope this gives you comfort, and I hope it helps give you optimism. That's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.